Elasticity is a word that you hear a lot in pretty much any computing environment because it's one of those buzzwords that makes us sound really like we know what we're talking about. But I will use it here because I think it's really applicable. And an important aspect of a cloud-based infrastructure is the ability to have an elastic, scalable implementation or architecture or solution. And we have that actually at pretty much every level within Azure, whether we're using infrastructure as a service with virtual machines, or if we're using web apps, or if we're using cloud services. All of these have the ability to scale in a couple of different directions, right? And we think of that scaling as being either horizontal or vertical, right? And horizontal, if you want to think about horizontal scaling, right, you can think, okay, I've got my virtual machine and it's running a load, but then as that load increases, I want to be able to create multiple instances so that I can load balance that service. And sorry, I can't draw boxes of the same size, right? And so that is what we would consider to be a horizontal scaling, right? So it's going to scale out as my application needs it to do. And then it can also scale back in as I no longer need that level of functionality. And that can actually be automated. Right? Now the other type of scaling is vertical scaling, right? And that's pretty simple, where I've got a particular size machine that I start out with, and then as my needs increase, then I can scale that up to provide more functionality, right? And then of course, as those needs decrease, I can scale that back down to its original size or maybe even lower than that. All right, now, horizontal scaling is not automated through the Azure environment. Vertical scaling, horizontal is. Vertical scaling is not automated. Okay, you can scale up, you can scale down. Now, one thing with that, when you scale a virtual machine, an individual virtual machine, when you scale it up or down, when you scale it vertically, then it's going to have to reboot to pick that up. Okay, so that is an operation that can cause downtime. All right, your horizontal scaling, A, it can be automated based on performance-based metrics, and B, that's something that is not going to interfere, if done properly, with the operations of your application, of your workload. All right, now, one thing I will mention is that the auto-scaling capability is implemented very differently in the version 1, the classic version of Azure, and the resource management-based version of Azure. In the classic, I can go to a virtual machine. I actually set up scaling on an individual virtual machine. In the resource management model, if you're going to have virtual machines and you want them to be able to scale, then you're going to need to create them as what's called a scale set. It's a different type of resource that you create that wraps around virtual machines, but you create it not as a virtual machine, but as a scale set. It works the same way, and you can set up auto scaling for it. It's just that it's just a different core resource in the resource management model.